All right, everyone, welcome back. We are diving deep today
Deep.
into some seriously interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about Bitcoin,
Bitcoin.
but not just as like, another investment or whatever.
Right.
It's more than that.
It's bigger.
Yeah, it's like the idea of Bitcoin as like
We're reserved.
a strategic reserve asset,
Strategic reserve asset.
which is
huge.
kind of crazy
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
So we're using some analysis from Mlion.ai.
Okay.
They do some really cool work in the crypto space.
Yeah, great.
And yeah, I was looking at some of their stuff and I was like, whoa,
What'd you see?
this is what jumped out at you.
Wild.
Right.
Like this whole idea that Bitcoin could be like on par with gold
Right.
as a reserve asset.
As a global
Yeah.
reserve asset.
It's like it's been in the news a lot recently, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin broke $100,000,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
which is a huge,
It's like psychologically.
psychologically, it's a huge.
Yeah. Area to break through.
Because it makes it seem more like real.
Exactly.
Like when you see like, oh, it's worth 6 figures.
Yeah, you don't even think about the numbers at that point. You're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is,
It's a big deal.
it's a big deal.
It's like, okay.
It's not just,
okay.
it's not just for like,
Yeah.
tech people on the internet anymore. This is like a
God.
real
It's like,
legitimate asset.
right. And for it to be considered a reserve asset,
It has to be.
it has to have that like store of value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the number one thing for a reserve asset.
Yeah.
Is that it's a reliable store of value.
So remind me why
Yeah.
do countries even like bother
That's
holding these reserve assets?
a strategic reserve asset is basically like a country's
Okay.
emergency fund.
Got it.
It's the money they keep
Okay.
in the safest possible place
Okay.
so they can use it
In case.
if there's ever like a major problem,
Yeah.
like a financial crisis, or a war or
Right.
something like that.
So like what, like gold?
Gold
Yeah.
is a classic example.
Okay.
Countries have been hoarding gold forever as
Right.
like the ultimate safe
Right.
haven asset.
Gotcha.
And then in more recent times, it's been,
Okay.
U.S. dollars,
Yeah,
euro,
yeah.
things like that.
Okay.
Strong currencies that are seen
Yeah.
as stable.
Okay.
But now Bitcoin is
Entering in the chat.
entering the chat. Exactly.
So if like hypothetically
yeah.
a country started
Yeah.
holding Bitcoin as like
As part of their reserves,
part of their like emergency fund,
it would be
what would
a
that?
really big deal.
Yeah. Like what would even?
I mean, imagine like the Federal Reserve
Right.
holding Bitcoin.
Oh wow.
That's a completely different world.
So that's like a whole other conversation about
It's a huge...
like what does that mean for monetary policy?
Right, exactly. It
Yeah.
changes everything.
Which is fascinating. But I want to get back to this Mlion.ai analysis
Sure.
because they were talking about the elections,
Yes.
like the upcoming U.S. election
Yeah, that's a presidential election.
and Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
And I was like,
It's interesting because there's definitely a correlation
okay,
between, how Bitcoin performs
okay.
and potential election outcomes.
So are they saying that like
found-
if a certain candidate wins?
They're not saying who to vote for or anything like that.
Okay.
But they are pointing out that certain political scenarios
Okay.
could create like
A better
a more favorable,
environment
regulatory environment
for crypto.
for Bitcoin,
Okay.
which could then lead to
More adoption.
through wider adoption
Okay.
and potentially,
Yeah.
more price increases. But
Yeah.
it's important to remember correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
Just because
Yeah.
two things seem to be moving together doesn't mean that one is causing the other.
Yeah.
There could be other factors at play.
Right.
But it's definitely something to watch,
Okay.
feel like pay attention to how
Yeah.
the political landscape is evolving and how that might impact
Good.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's future.
Exactly.
And that's, I guess, what makes it so interesting as a potential reserve asset, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like,
It's decentralized.
yeah, it's like outside of,
It's not controlled by any one country
yeah,
or
okay.
government or central bank.
So it's like,
So it's potentially,
it could be like a hedge
a hedge
against the whole system,
Exactly.
which is kind of a crazy thought.
It is.
And we're also seeing all these big institutions getting into Bitcoin now.
Institutional investors are pouring in.
Yeah, and these are like,
Which is huge.
yeah, these are not your like,
Yeah. This
Big
is not like your
pro-
Reddit
this-
day trader.
yeah.
This is like
yeah,
big money.
like the big players.
Hedge funds, asset managers,
Pension funds,
pension funds, like you name it.
they're all getting in on it.
They're all starting to take it seriously.
But I think a big part of that is Bitcoin ETFs.
The ETFs have made a huge difference.
Because it makes it so much easier.
It makes it so much easier to...
For institutions to get involved.
Get involved.
Because they can just buy shares of an ETF.
Yeah, instead of having to like...
Yeah, they don't have to worry about custody or security or any of that stuff.
So it's like...
It's a simple way.
You can just tick a box.
Exactly.
And they're in.
They're exposed to Bitcoin.
And this is all happening. Like,
and all of this is happening
in the context of a crazy
the craziest
background
economic environment.
Right. Like we've got
inflation.
We've got like
recession fears.
Yeah. Everyone's talking about recession.
Geopolitical tensions.
Like war.
Yeah.
Like it's a mess out there.
A lot. And so some people are looking at Bitcoin and being like,
yeah, this is the answer.
This is the safe haven.
This is what we need.
Like the head.
To protect us.
Against all of this.
Against all the craziness.
Yeah.
Because it's not tied to any one country's fate.
So it's a big idea.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It's a paradigm shift. It's a completely different way of thinking about
money and finance.
Money and finance.
Financing.
And the global economy.
And like the future.
The future of it all.
Of it all. So what's the like...
The main takeaway, I think, is that
what should people...
This narrative of Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset is not going away.
It is not.
It's gaining momentum.
Yeah.
And it has the potential to really reshape the global financial landscape. So if this trend continues...
Right.
It raises some really important questions, like what happens to traditional currencies?
Yeah.
Could we see a future
where
countries are holding
less dollars
and
more Bitcoin?
More Bitcoin.
Wow.
Maybe even instead of gold.
Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
That's a lot to think about.
It's a big idea.
Yeah.
But it's something that we need to start thinking about.
Well, this has been fascinating.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah. Thanks for
having me.
Yeah. Breaking this all down for us.
It's a pleasure.
And for everyone listening,
keep an eye on this space.
Yeah. This is a story that's definitely not over.
Not even close.
Oh, yeah. Stay tuned.
We'll see what happens.
All right.